Hello, and welcome. You are watching Step Up Medicine's video on oxygen and carbon dioxide transport. Gas exchange in the lungs is only half the job. Once oxygen enters the blood, how does it reach your tissues? And how is carbon dioxide carried back to the lungs? In this episode, you'll learn how oxygen is transported in blood, what the oxygen-haemoglobin dissociation curve tells us, the three ways carbon dioxide is carried, and how diseases and physiology affect gas delivery.
Oxygen is carried in two forms. First, about 98% is bound to hemoglobin inside red blood cells. Each hemoglobin molecule can carry 4 oxygen molecules. This creates oxyhemoglobin. Second, about 1.5% is dissolved in plasma. This small amount determines the PaO, or partial pressure of oxygen. PaO reflects dissolved oxygen, but total oxygen content depends mostly on hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein made of 4 subunits, 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains. Each subunit contains a heme group, with an iron atom in the ferrous form, Fe2+. Each iron binds 1 oxygen, so one hemoglobin molecule can carry up to 4 oxygens. This binding is cooperative. As one oxygen binds, the rest bind more easily. If iron is oxidized to ferric form, that's Fe3+, you get methemoglobin, which cannot bind oxygen. This curve shows the relationship between PaO and hemoglobin saturation. It's sigmoidal, due to cooperative binding. At high PaO, like in the lungs, hemoglobin is nearly fully saturated. At low PaO, like in the tissues, hemoglobin releases oxygen more easily. Normal PaO is about 100 mm of mercury, with a saturation of around 97%. Let's now dive deeper into what causes the oxygen-hemoglobin dissociation curve to shift, and why it matters. This curve shows how easily hemoglobin binds to or releases oxygen. A right shift means hemoglobin has a lower affinity for oxygen. It lets go of oxygen more easily in the tissues. A left shift means hemoglobin holds on more tightly, making it harder to release oxygen. These shifts are critical because they determine how much oxygen is actually delivered to your cells, especially under stress, illness, or changing environments. Let's start with the right shift. Dallas Pocosautas Kaltroleng Bussanas Butate. It occurs when hemoglobin becomes less greedy for oxygen. Dallas Puckle, it's more willing to release oxygen to the tissues. Dallas Puckle right shift is triggered by increased carbon dioxide. More CO in the blood, such as during exercise or in respiratory failure, acidifies the blood. This causes hemoglobin to unload oxygen more readily. Increased hydrogen ions, or low pH, acidosis, whether metabolic or respiratory, means more hydrogen ions. This also reduces hemoglobin's oxygen affinity. Increased temperature. Active tissues generate heat. More common. Higher temperatures make hemoglobin release oxygen more easily, exactly what working muscles need. Increased 2,3-BPG. This molecule is made in red blood cells. It binds to hemoglobin and reduces its oxygen affinity. 2,3-BPG levels increase in chronic hypoxia, high altitude, anemia, exercise. Right shift helps oxygen get to where it's needed most, fast and efficiently. Here's a memory tip. Right shift means release. Think of it as hemoglobin letting go of oxygen during times of stress or activity. Now let's look at the left shift. Here, hemoglobin has a higher affinity for oxygen. It binds oxygen more tightly and is reluctant to let go. Left shift is caused by decreased carbon dioxide. Less CO means less acidity. The blood becomes more alkaline, and hemoglobin holds onto oxygen, alkalosis, or high pH. In conditions like vomiting or hyperventilation, pH rises. This makes hemoglobin bind oxygen more strongly. Decreased temperature. Lower temperatures, such as in hypothermia, shift the curve to the left. Hemoglobin won't release oxygen as easily in cold tissues. Decreased 2,3-BPG. This happens in stored blood, or in certain enzyme deficiencies. With low 2,3-BPG, hemoglobin becomes sticky for oxygen. Fetal hemoglobin. Fetal hemoglobin is naturally left-shifted. It binds oxygen more tightly so that the fetus can extract oxygen from maternal blood across the placenta. Carbon monoxide poisoning. CO binds to hemoglobin about 200 times more strongly than oxygen. It blocks binding sites and causes a severe left shift. Even if PaO appears normal, oxygen delivery is dangerously impaired. Left shift equals less oxygen delivery to tissues. so even when the blood looks well oxygenated, the tissues may be hypoxic. Carbon dioxide is transported in 3 ways. First, about 70% is carried as bicarbonate. Inside red blood cells, Colorado combines with water, forming carbonic acid, which dissociates into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate. Regoiand dade BDT-pia, dehel trabasai bicarbonate, are passivised by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. Acid inside acylcarboxydams. Second, about 20 to 25% binds to hemoglobin, forming carbaminohemoglobin. Third, about 5 to 10% is dissolved directly in plasma. This dissolved CO determines the pKa. CO is more soluble than oxygen, so it travels well in plasma. 2 key effects improve gas exchange. The Bohr effect helps unload oxygen in the tissues. Increased CO and hydrogen ions lower pH, and hemoglobin releases oxygen more easily. The Haldane effect helps remove CO in the lungs. When oxygen binds to hemoglobin in the lungs, it displaces CO, promoting exhalation. Bohr equals O offloading in tissues. Haldane equals CO offloading in lungs. Here's how CO becomes bicarbonate. In tissues, Colorado diffuses into red blood cells. There, carbonic anhydrase catalyzes this reaction. CO plus water becomes carbonic acid. Carbonic acid dissociates into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate. Bicarbonate exits the red blood cell into the plasma. Chloride ions enter to maintain electrical balance. This is the chloride shift. Hydrogen ions are buffered by hemoglobin. In the lungs, the process reverses. Bicarbonate re-enters the RBC, recombines with hydrogen, forms carbonic acid, and then CO and water. CO is then exhaled. This system also helps regulate pH through the bicarbonate buffer. Let's link this to real-life conditions. Anemia. Low hemoglobin means less oxygen carrying capacity, even if PaO is normal. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Colorado binds tightly to hemoglobin, reducing oxygen binding and shifting the curve left. PaO may be normal, but oxygen delivery is severely impaired. Fever and acidosis shift the curve to the right, improving oxygen delivery. Hypothermia or alkalosis shift the curve left, limiting oxygen release. At high altitude, low atmospheric oxygen triggers more 2,3 BPG production, helping oxygen unload in tissues.
Let's review the key points. Oxygen is mostly bound to hemoglobin. CO is mostly carried as bicarbonate. The oxygen-hemoglobin curve shows how tightly hemoglobin holds oxygen. Right shift equals easier oxygen release. Left shift equals tighter binding. The Bohr effect promotes O unloading in tissues. The Haldane effect promotes CO unloading in lungs. Here is a quick question to test your knowledge. What is the main form of carbon dioxide transport in the blood? A. Dissolved in plasma. B. Bound to hemoglobin. C. As carbon monoxide. D. As bicarbonate. Drop your answers in the comments. If this helped clarify your basics, like and subscribe for more high-yield videos. Up next, we will be taking a closer look at the control of breathing. Thanks for watching, and keep stepping up your knowledge.